I saved a man and lost my job, but it turned out he was my boss. Hello. Welcome. Enjoy, subscribe, and activate notifications. Jane Carter stepped off the subway, her heels clicking on the pavement as she hurried, debating whether to waste precious minutes on a coffee. Her stomach growled, reminding her she hadn't had breakfast. Fine, Jane decided, rushing inside. Good morning, Linda. The usual, please, and make it quick. I'm late, Jane exhaled. Linda, the elderly barista, smiled. Coming right up, Jane glanced at her watch, anxiety rising. She grabbed the coffee. Thanks, Linda, she called, darting out the door. The scalding coffee warmed her hands as she walked briskly down the sidewalk, rehearsing her excuse for Mr. Morgan. Mr. Morgan, I'm sorry I'm late because, no, that's not right. Maybe Mr. Morgan, I apologize for. She was interrupted by the sight of a man in his mid-30s in a business suit, stumbling and leaning against a building with a pale face. Jane stopped, concerned. Hey, sir, are you okay? She called out uncertainly. The man looked at her. Confused, I don't know. Something's wrong. His eyes rolled back, and he started to collapse. Jane barely caught him, preventing his head from hitting the pavement. Help! Someone call an ambulance, she shouted. Passers-by stopped to stare but didn't assist. Jane, with trembling hands, dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? Came the operator's voice. There's a man on the street, unconscious. Please send an ambulance. Jane spoke quickly. Stay with him. What's the address? Jane looked around. We're at the corner of Michigan Avenue and 8th Street in front of Mike's Cafe. An ambulance is on the way. Is he breathing? Jane leaned close. Yes, but weakly and irregularly. Good. Check his pulse. She took his wrist, feeling for a pulse. I think so, but it's faint. You're doing great. Stay with him until help arrives. Jane held the man's hand. Please hold on, she whispered. Help is coming. Time seemed to crawl. Jane kept her eyes on the man's pale face, praying he'd keep breathing. A small crowd gathered, but no one knew him. Finally, sirens wailed, and the ambulance arrived. Paramedics quickly assessed the situation. What happened? One asked, kneeling by the man. He collapsed, Jane explained. His pulse is weak. You did the right thing, the paramedic nodded. Jim, get the defibrillator. Looks like a heart attack. They loaded the man onto a stretcher and into the ambulance. Are you a relative? A paramedic asked Jane. No, just a passerby. Can I come with you? The paramedics exchanged looks, then nodded. All right, get in. We might need more information. At the hospital, the man was rushed to intensive care. Jane filled out paperwork, stating she wasn't a relative. You're very kind, the nurse remarked. Most wouldn't have done what you did. Jane shrugged, embarrassed. I couldn't just leave him there. Exhausted, Jane sank into a plastic chair in the hallway. She realized she was 3 hours late for work. Frantic, she weighed her options. Stay and find out about the man or go and risk her job. A doctor emerged from the ICU. MS. Carter? Yes, that's me. Jane jumped up. He's stable, the doctor smiled. He had a heart attack, but thanks to your quick action, he's going to be okay. You probably saved his life. Jane's legs nearly gave way with relief. Thank God, she whispered. We'll keep monitoring him, but he's past the critical stage. Thank you for your help, MS. Carter. We need more people like you. Jane smiled. I only did what anyone would. Unfortunately, not everyone would, the doctor shook his head. You should be proud. After leaving the hospital, Jane grabbed a cab, realizing she didn't have the money, but didn't care. To the office quickly, she told the driver. The whole way, she rehearsed her explanation for Mr. Morgan. Known for his temper, he wouldn't tolerate tardiness. At the office, Jane took a deep breath before entering. The usual bustle filled the air, but colleagues stared as she walked in. Jane, where have you been? Mr. Morgan is furious, his secretary Lucy said. I'll explain, Jane sighed, heading to his office. Good luck, Lucy whispered. Jane knocked and entered at his gruff command. Miss Carter, you're 3 hours late. Mr. Morgan exploded. I can explain, Jane began. You've jeopardized an important deal. Save your excuses. You've let the whole team down. Pack your things, you're fired. Jane's heart sank. Please listen. I saved a man's life. Really? Who? Mr. Morgan scoffed. Jane took a deep breath, recounting the story of the man, the ambulance, and the hospital. Do you expect me to believe this ridiculous story? He finally said. I can show you the hospital papers, Jane insisted. Even if true, it doesn't excuse your tardiness. You should have called. That's why you're not fit for this company. You're dismissed. Jane felt tears well up. Please, give me another chance. I'll work harder than ever. Mr. Morgan turned away. Goodbye, Miss Carter. Jane left, the ground feeling unsteady beneath her. Oh, honey, Lucy whispered, seeing Jane's tear-streaked face. He fired you, didn't he? Jane nodded, unable to speak. That old jerk, Lucy muttered. Don't worry, you'll find a better job. Want me to talk to him? No. Thanks. Jane shook her head. You know how stubborn he is. Thanks for being kind. The two hugged. Jane packed her things and left the office, rain lightly falling as if the city mourned her failure. Now what? Appointments. Jane didn't forget her promise to visit the hospital. Entering room 305, she felt the day's tension ease. Hi, she said softly, sitting by the bed. I had 3 interviews today, no luck yet, but I'm not giving up. She took the man's hand, drawing strength from the simple contact. A hiring manager said, I seemed very motivated. That's something, right? Maybe next time. She fell silent, looking at his still face. Sometimes I think I'm talking to myself, but then I remember you might hear me. I believe you'll get better. We're both fighting our battles, but we'll get through this. Jane spoke of her job search struggles and small victories. Talking to the unconscious man was surprisingly comforting. Your visits help me stay positive. When I'm here, I remember why I started this, to help someone. It gives me strength to keep job hunting. As she left the room, Jane bumped into a familiar nurse. Hi, Jane, the nurse smiled. How are you today? Jane sighed. It's been tough. 3 interviews, 3 rejections. But I'm trying not to get discouraged. The nurse shook her head sympathetically. Jane, I see you here every day, despite your problems. You're an amazing person. Don't lose hope. Thank you, Jane smiled, feeling a bit better. I'll do my best. That night, Jane sat at her kitchen table, counting her remaining money. Okay, let's see, she murmured. If I cut back, I might last another 15 days. But she shook her head, pushing away the bleak thoughts. Something has to go right. It has to. She opened her laptop and dived back into job hunting, crafting new resumes and writing cover letters, ignoring the late hour. Maybe this one fits, she told herself, assistant at a publishing house. Sounds interesting. I'll send my resume now. It was past midnight when Jane finally shut down her laptop and went to bed. Lying in the dark, she thought about the day, the man in the hospital, and the uncertain future. Please, she whispered into the darkness, unsure if she was addressing fate, God, or the universe. Let tomorrow be better. Let something go right. Days passed, and despite Jane's efforts, things didn't improve. One night, as she sat at the kitchen table counting her remaining savings again, she realized she could no longer delay the inevitable. So this is it, she whispered, her voice trembling with unshed tears. I can't stay here. She picked up the phone and dialed her landlord's number. Hello, Mr.
Green.
This is Jane Carter. Ms. Carter, what can I do for you? Jane took a deep breath. Mr. Green, I can't make next month's rent. I'm going to have to move out. There was a pause. Ms. Carter, are you sure? Maybe we can work something out? No, Mr. Green. Jane shook her head. I lost my job and haven't found another. I have no choice. I need to move back with my parents. I'm sorry to hear that, Mr. Green said sincerely. You've been a great tenant. Thank you, Jane replied softly. Could you prepare the paperwork? I'll be out in a week. After the call, Jane sat still for a long time, staring blankly. The reality of her situation began to hit her. Her Chicago dream was over. The next day, Jane visited the hospital as usual. Entering room 305, She felt a lump in her throat. "Hi," she said, sitting by the bed. "I'm here again, but today I came to say goodbye." She took the man's hand as she had done every day for the past weeks. "I had so much hope I'd find a job and stay in Chicago, but it didn't work out. I don't even have money to survive a couple more months while job hunting. I have to leave and go back to my hometown." Jane paused, trying to hold back her emotions. "I'll miss you, you know. It's strange, isn't it? We didn't really know each other, but these visits have become a big part of my life. You helped me not give up, even when it was hard." She squeezed his hand. "I believe you'll get better. You'll be okay. Maybe one day you'll wake up and tell the nurses about the strange girl who visited you every day. I hope you remember me," with a smile. She stood up, tears streaming down her cheeks.
"Goodbye.
"And thank you for everything." Jane looked at his still face one last time and left the room, closing the door quietly. She didn't notice his hand move slightly in response to her words. Jane spent her last week in Chicago packing her things. Each item she boxed brought back memories. "Remember when you bought this mug?" she asked herself, wrapping it carefully in newspaper. "It was your first day at work."
You were so excited."
She found an old photo of her and her colleagues at an office party. "I wonder how they're doing. Hope Lucy is okay." Jane methodically packed her life into cardboard boxes, trying not to think about what she was leaving behind. Books, clothes, mementos, all found their place in the boxes. The night before she left, Jane sat on the windowsill, looking at the city lights. "Goodbye, Dream City," she whispered. "Thank you for all the lessons, the ups and downs. Maybe someday I'll return. Until then, it's time to start a new chapter." With those words, she closed the window and finished her last preparations. The morning of her departure was overcast, as if the city itself was sad to see her go. Jane took one last look at the empty apartment, sighed, and began loading the boxes into the rental car. "Well, this is it," she murmured, closing the trunk. "Goodbye, big city." Suddenly, she heard footsteps running towards her. Turning, she saw a man with a bouquet of flowers. Her heart skipped a beat. She recognized him. It was the hospital patient. "Jane," he called, stopping in front of her and catching his breath. "Thank goodness I caught you in time." "You're awake," Jane whispered, not believing her eyes. "But how did you find me?" The man smiled, handing her the bouquet. "I heard everything you said while I was in a coma, every word, and when I woke up, my first thought was to find you." Jane took the flowers, tears welling up. "I don't know what to say." "Say you won't leave," he said seriously, handing her an envelope. "Here are the papers for your job and the lease for your new apartment. Please stay in Chicago." Jane looked at him in astonishment, then at the envelope, then back at him.
"But why?
"You don't know me." "Yes, I do," he objected softly. "I know you're kind and compassionate. You didn't walk away from a stranger in need. You don't give up, even when things seem hopeless. And I want someone like that by my side." Jane couldn't hold back anymore and started crying, hugging him. "I'm so glad you're okay," she sobbed. He hugged her back, and for a moment, they stood there, oblivious to the curious looks of passers-by. "So, let's see your new place," he suggested when Jane calmed down a bit. She nodded, still in shock at what was happening. He drove her to a luxurious black sedan. "By the way, I didn't get a chance to introduce myself properly. I'm Alex Hastings," he said. "Hastings?" Jane asked, surprised. "Like Hastings Industries?" Alex nodded. "Exactly. I'm the CEO." Jane was stunned. Hastings Industries was one of the largest tech companies in the country. Her new apartment turned out to be a luxury suite overlooking Central Park. Alex showed her around the spacious living room, modern kitchen, and a bedroom the size of her old apartment. "This is too much," Jane murmured. "I can't accept this." "Yes, you can," Alex interrupted gently, "and you should. Consider it a thank you for saving my life." They sat in the living room, and Alex began to tell his story. "You see, Jane, I'm an orphan. I don't have family to look for me, and my staff, well, I'm often away on long business trips. They were surprised by my absence, but thought I was working on a secret project. They tried to manage on their own, waiting for my return." Jane listened, holding her breath. "When I woke up and realized how much time had passed, I was shocked. but my first thought was to find you. You were the only constant in this chaos. Your voice, your stories helped me recover. I'm glad I could help, Jane said softly. You did so much more, Alex replied seriously. And now I want to offer you a job. I need a personal assistant, someone I can trust completely. Someone like you. Jane was speechless. But I have no experience working for such a big company. You'll learn, Alex smiled. But honesty and compassion are qualities money can't buy. Jane took a deep breath.
I don't know what to say.
Say yes, Alex urged with a smile, and Jane did. The following weeks flew by as Jane dove into her new job, helping Alex regain control of the company. She learned quickly, grasping the complexities of the business world on the go. Alex proved to be not only a brilliant businessman, but also an excellent teacher, patiently explaining complex aspects of the job and always taking time to answer her questions. You're doing better than I expected, he said one day after Jane delivered a brilliant presentation to some investors. Jane blushed at the praise. I have a good teacher. Their eyes met for a moment. Gradually, something more than a working relationship began to develop between them. Jane found herself admiring Alex's profile as he looked thoughtfully out the office window. Alex started touching her arm more often during their talks. One night, after working late on an important project, they ordered dinner to the office. Tired but satisfied with their work, they sat on the couch to enjoy their meal and conversation. You know, Jane, Alex said suddenly, putting his plate aside, I never really believed in destiny, but now I think our meeting was meant to be. Jane's heart raced. What do you mean? She asked softly. Alex took her hand. I mean, you changed my life, not just by saving me on the street. You showed me there's still kindness and selflessness in the world. You've become an important part of my life. Jane held her breath, looking into his eyes. Alex, but he didn't let her finish, gently brushing his lips against hers. The kiss was soft, tentative, like a question, and Jane answered, feeling warmth spread through her body. When they finally parted, Alex smiled. I've fallen in love with you, Jane Carter. Your voice, your kindness, your strength. And I want to be with you, not just at work, but in life. Jane felt tears of joy well up. I love you too, Alex. You've restored my faith in miracles. They kissed again, knowing their lives would never be the same. Many challenges and trials awaited them, but now they knew they could overcome anything together. I sincerely hope you enjoyed the story. I'm sure the next video appearing on your screen will also move you. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, give it a like, and activate the notification bell so you don't miss our upcoming videos. A big kiss, and see you in the next story.